I recently ran across KallMeKris. I know I'm a little late to the game, but it's game on. I could listen to this girl read the phone book at half speed, and I'd still watch till the end. She is so talented. She is so funny. I rewind and rewind just because of those funny parts. But as I took a deep dive into her videos, I ran across two that I want to talk to you about today. The first one was her opening up to her millions of viewers about trauma in her life and coming clean, so to speak, about her mental health challenges. And while that took a whole lot of courage for her to do, there's something even more remarkable about Kris. I'm going to be playing and reacting to the two videos that I mentioned. It's an interview with Dr. Mike and her telling her trauma story. I'm bringing you Kris today, not only because of her courage and her talent, but because she's a remarkable woman and an exemplary example of how to come through, overcome, and thrive after trauma and abuse.
Fortunately, Kris's family was there to support her.
The last thing you want to do is call a bunch of people, talk to a bunch of people, maybe get no's or yeses or whatever. You just don't want, it's the last thing you want to do. So
How did you manage that?
I wouldn't have, I'd be dead without my family doing that.
Absolutely. That's the thing. We want to isolate and don't talk about stuff. And that's the worst thing we can do, is to isolate and refuse to talk about what we're going through. Now, it's going to be the last thing you want to do. But that's the last thing we need to do. Before we move on, we need a little backstory here.
I guess I will start in middle school because that's kind of when everything started. I was diagnosed pretty young with depression. My mom had and still suffers with depression.
Real quick, I wanted to point out here that depression is a physiological thing. It's not just a mental thing, and it can be inherited. Kris inherited from her mother, who saw the signs and thankfully intervened.
But she knew a lot about it, and she could see the signs in me when I was younger. I just would isolate myself. I was not very social outside of school and sports and stuff that kind of forced me to be social. And I just was not ever happy. I pretended to be happy a lot. It was something I got really, really good at. So nobody outside of my family knew about anything that was going on. And I also just never wanted to be like a burden on anybody. So I would just always put on this happy mask. Anyway, it started in middle school with depression, and soon followed anxiety, panic attacks, a lot of hyperventilating.
Already suffering from depression, in the 10th grade, Kris lost a very dear friend to suicide.
I think one of the worst years in high school was grade 10. And if you don't know which one is grade 10, I'm not sure which country you're in or whatever, 15 to 16 years old. I had a friend commit suicide, and it was just a really awesome guy. That was at a time where I was feeling the same way.
The only thing that kept Kris from taking her own life was seeing how everybody was affected affected by her friend's death, and she decided she didn't want to put anybody else through that.
And I saw everybody's reaction to that. And that's what prevented me from ever taking it that far, because I saw how much people were affected and how much people were hurt. I know so many people that were super close to him. He had so many, good years ahead of him. But when you're in that moment of darkness, I understand. You feel like there's no escape. But there is. So, grade 10 goes by, really just a somber year.
In the 11th grade, Kris still had anxiety and depression, but felt like she was faking it a little less, and she was more social.
Going into grade 11, still struggling a lot with depression, mostly depression. I had a little bit of anxiety, on medication for depression and everything. And it was starting to get better. It was starting to get good. I was starting to level out a little bit, enjoy myself, go out with friends a little bit more. I felt like I wasn't faking it as much in grade 11, up until
sometime around the 12th grade, Kris experienced a sexual assault that she kept to herself. She felt shame, and she didn't believe that anybody would believe her if she told.
That was probably the lowest I had been since I had experienced any kind of depression. After that, I completely shut down. Completely. I was on autopilot for the next year at least. Nobody knew. I didn't tell anyone. I was embarrassed and ashamed, and I don't think anybody will believe me. If you're put in that situation, you always should tell somebody, come forward, go to the authorities. I coasted through grade 12. I was a pro. I was a pro at acting like nothing was wrong with me.
Between the ages of 18 and 20, when Kris was in college, she was back on her meds, taking therapy, and had joined the soccer team. At some point, she got ill and lost a lot of weight. As the weight loss continued, she started eating clean and working out. By 2019, she was in a full-blown eating disorder. Kris didn't look in the mirror. She didn't want to see herself. The turning point occurred when one day she saw a picture of herself, a picture that someone else had taken. She was shocked.
And I got so scared. I couldn't believe I did that to myself, because I never looked in the mirror and had my body dysmorphia. Didn't see when I looked down what I saw in that picture. And I kept that picture and printed it out and had it up. And that's the day I started actually recovering.
Now that you're all caught up, let's return to the interview.
How did you have that conversation with your family to say that you need
I didn't. It was like an intervention.
Really? How did that happen?
I was, this was like at the height of like the worst of my eating disorder, which was anorexia. And I had a plethora of health issues and like heart problems and all that kind of stuff.
Related to the anorexia?
Related to that. My mom had made me go into my doctor and have like an initial look over to see what was going on, gave me the diagnosis and everything. And then he had separate conversations with my parents about what was going on, and basically said what I just said. Like, if she keeps going this way, like she'll die. So they kind of just put their foot down. And at the time I was still living with my parents and everything. So it's like, I didn't really have a choice. Like I didn't care, but they cared. And like, I cared about what they thought. So that's the only way. But it's sad when people don't have that backup like that, because like, how else do you do it?
Was it your parents plus your siblings?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it was a traditional.
Honestly, it was Jessica, my older sister, first. I'd say that she really, really pushed for it, or like pushed my parents to push me. Not that my parents weren't concerned, they were, but she just saw, I guess, the worst of it because we were really close, and like she could see, because like every eating disorder is super, super different, but anorexia especially is just a very like sneaky disorder. So she was able to see a lot of like the habits that I was doing. It wasn't just like me not eating dinner with my family. It was, you know, whatever I was doing. She was just able to see it more and tell my parents about it. And at the time, my parents didn't understand it at all. So they're just concerned and they're sad, but they're more just mad because they're like, you're like, at the time I was, you know, a relatively successful hairdresser, like had my own business. They're like, you're smart. I don't know why you're doing this, but it has nothing to do with any of that. It's a mental disorder at the end of the day. So bless their hearts, they went and like took classes on it and like to understand it and everything.
Remarkable. Two things out of this clip. As parents, we hate to see our children suffer. And sometimes we just can't connect to what's wrong. As she said, her parents were angry and they couldn't stand seeing what she was doing. They expressed, I don't understand. From their perspective, she has everything going for herself. But as she said, it's not about all I've got going for myself. I'm suffering through some trauma that I can't handle. And it turns out that they're being willing to do some study up on it and try to figure it out from her perspective may be part of the reason that Kris is still here.
For me, and this is through going through a lot of like outpatient and therapy and all this stuff and understanding why I'm doing it, it was all about control because I felt out of control and it was about hurting myself, and not in an obvious way, not as in like some people cut, some people do, but that was a way of hurting myself. And yeah, it was hard to wrap my head around at first. But yeah, my whole thing revolved around having that one little thing that I can control in my life. Whether if I couldn't control my job, I couldn't control my relationship that I was in at the time, or whatever, XYZ, all these things. But it was my one thing that I could. So, yeah, that's what it was for me.
Yeah, control. See? That's exactly what it is. In a previous video, I talked about the fact that a lot of the ways that we deal with trauma are rooted in control issues. It's about the fact that we experienced something extremely traumatic that we were out of control of. We couldn't control that we were traumatized. We couldn't control that we were robbed, sexually assaulted, abused. And in our brains, we seek anything that we feel we can control. Remember, I always told you that trauma will twist our perspective and completely change how we see everything. And internally, in order to deal with that trauma, sometimes we develop control issues. We're going to see in a minute how she dealt with it, what control issues she developed.
And then it revolved a lot around obsessive compulsive numbers, like whether it's scale numbers, caloric numbers, how many steps you're taking. Like it didn't really matter about the image as much as it did about that kind of stuff. Just having that repetition and routine. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I thought like something bad was going to happen if I didn't, but it was just like, it was just extremely horrible thoughts behind all of that. So it's like, if I don't accomplish these things, then I'm disgusting, a failure. That's probably the biggest one. Mm-hmm. Or and it's just all this self-talk. It's like having a devil on your shoulder through your whole day. Like even if you're not in any position where you're eating, like if I'm, I don't want to say whatever. If I'm walking on the street, I'm thinking about if my sister texts me and say, hey, you want to go out to dinner or something like that, mm-hmm. then I have to think about, okay, the rest of my day is going to look like this and I need to make up for this. And then after I need to make up for that. And then it's like constant, and it just like overrides your entire life. And you become a miserable, miserable person. And I was for years.
Yeah, so now you see what she was going through. It took over her entire life. And the whole time it was taking over, I don't think she recognized the fact that it was because of trauma that she had experienced. So you get caught in this cycle of just being, as strange as this sounds, y'all, as much in control as her mind told her she was so out of control. And something in her, even in that condition, knew that something wasn't right, and it was ruling her. Isn't that something? It's amazing how she's got all this OCD going on as a way to cope and have control. But it was miserable because even doing that, she was completely out of control. Poor thing, she was miserable.
I was very repellent in all the therapy I went to, group therapy, psychiatrist, all that kind of stuff.
Repellent?
I didn't, everything that they told me, I was just, you're an idiot. Like, I know, like pushing it away. People haven't gone through it, so they don't know, even though that they have medical degrees or this kind of thing. Like, you still don't understand what I'm going through. So at the end of the day, it is completely up to you to use those tools. And whether I liked it or not, I was learning tools like through all of that, whether it's like a grounding situation, literally just doing the exact opposite of what you're thinking. And that gives you more power. Mm-hmm. And no, I'm still not happy about that. And I'm still sad about it, but I'm not giving in to the bad thoughts. I'm not spiraling. And like if I give into the ED thoughts, then I'm happy with myself, but in a bad way. Mm-hmm. Like taking some of the things where I was like, okay, yeah, I can do that, and finding things that did help me.
Yep.
It's kind of hard, and it's a hard way to put this, but like you kind of have to like prove yourself to doctors.
Yeah.
For that anorexia diagnosis, which is not necessarily something I wanted, but inside I did want help. Like I wasn't happy with my life. I was miserable, wanted to die. I looked terrible. I looked like I was on death's door. I wasn't happy with it. So when I go to the doctor and he's like, well, like, yeah, you're like on the underweight BMI, but like, I wouldn't say you're like anorexic. It's just like, so like, just eat a little more and listen. And you're just like, oh fuck. Like I'm a failure again. So it's like, all right, well, like, I'll show you, it's like, it's terrible. Mm-hmm. But I think, and I know because I went to outpatient with a bunch of people with different kind of eating disorders, is that everybody kind of had to like prove themselves in a way, which I understand, because you don't want to just take everybody's word.
No, I don't understand. See, this is what I appreciate. I appreciate the fact that there have been movements over the last couple of decades for doctors to do, like, they do this depression inventory and they ask questions to determine if they need to refer you for services whether that's because you need social services because you're not able to pay your bills or you're in a state of depression. I'm good with that. But what I think needs to happen is doctors need to, especially those that are going to be dealing with people who are disordered in their eating, don't just tell them to eat more. There's something missing here. What else could be happening? What happened to this person? That doctor should have given her an overview of eating disorders and referred her out to experts that could help her. Don't just tell her to eat more. It's like, duh. How are you going to tell me to eat more? I'm obviously not eating, and you haven't even considered that I might be anorexic. You've determined that I'm not. But what are you not asking me? What are you not hearing from my parents? What are you not hearing me tell you? Okay? And where she was, she heard all of that as, oh, I'm blowing it again. The blame the victim type of thing. Now, I'm not saying that doctor deliberately, it's your fault, but that's how it came off. And how it came off was to her, oh, I'm a failure again. Perpetuating that same behavior that's trying to take her out. I'm not going to rant.
Like you're always
I mean, I
sketching
write
and-
scripts.
Okay.
I write, and that's maybe a way of coping as well as this job came very shortly after I started recovery. About not even like 4 months after I started recovery. And I was trying to find outlets because recovery has been a nightmare for me. I've had ups and downs. Nobody's recovery is linear. But anyway, at the time, COVID happened. And then I had to close down my salon, and that was one of my outlets. I'm an absolute workaholic. I have that kind of addictive personality, so that was ripped away from me, and I was just kind of sitting there like, what the hell am I gonna do? And then my little brother convinced me to get TikTok, and I was just like, I'll make some videos. And I made like little skits for my family back in the day and that kind of thing. So I was like, and I love SNL and all these things. So I was like, okay, I'll make some skits or whatever. So that became my outlet, and I was unhealthily obsessed with that. I was like pumping out like 7-8 videos a day. I started writing and filming and doing all these things, not to become TikTok famous. That was not even on my radar. It was just kind of an accident. But yeah, it became my new like coping mechanism. And I'd say it still is in a way. And I don't know if that's healthy, if my job is kind of part of my coping mechanisms. I went through over 365 days. I think it was like 380 something days of posting in a row. Like I never took a day off, and it was like a goal of mine. Again, another like obsessive thing that I was doing. And then I realized that I was like, oh, this is like becoming really unhealthy, and I was getting burnt out. I was obsessing over having to post at the exact same time every day. Obviously I was getting more and more viewers at that time. So if I wasn't,
So the reward was there.
the reward was there for sure. And like, especially now, like I don't care about numbers. Like it's whatever. But you look at a video that I was just consistently growing. Like there was no going down. So it was like, oh, here's a new thing I can fail at or continue to do good at. And since I was posting every day, I was just like, well, if I stop posting every day, I'm going to be a failure. So it just continued. And then I just got to a point literally where I broke down. I had given fully back into my ED. I had got into a deep, deep depression again, having suicidal thoughts, all the whole barrage of things. And I was like, okay, something needs to give. I went back into therapy. And that was the consensus, was like, you need to either stop all this together or find some sort of balance. So I had to like create a schedule for myself. And at first was still too much. But now I think I've gotten to a place where it's like, I can manage. I could still manage to take care of myself or work on taking care of myself while still being, semi-successful at what I'm doing.
Superb. She went back into therapy. And this gets to what I talked about once before, the balance, the motivation. I believe that what Kris is doing is in her purpose. She's utilizing her God-given talents and abilities. She's an exceptional actress, a superb comedian. These are natural abilities that she has. Later on, I'll talk about why I'm kind of concerned about calling it a coping strategy as opposed to living in purpose. But that same control thing had her spiraling out of control, doing something that one, she enjoyed doing, two, she was exceptional at doing, and three, I think it was an excellent use of her time. But now we're getting into first, balance, motivation. Anything you do, good things that we do. When we go too far off the deep end, then they are not serving us. Now, everything she was doing was serving other people, and other people were benefiting from it. But it was doing her no good because the deeper motivation was control instead of balance. Okay. Now, the only thing that made what she was doing a problem was the excessiveness. She had gotten excessive about it and moved her OCD to another venue, so to speak. And I'm really glad that her therapist didn't tell her to quit. She gave her a choice. And I'm so glad Kris chose to establish a reasonable schedule. Now, this interview is over a year old, and just based on the most recent videos I've watched, she has clearly gotten in touch with some of her personal values because she made some good life decisions. And it's apparent to me that she's enjoying what she's doing. It's more balanced, and that's why as trauma survivors, we have to always remember that we can take our excellent gifts and let it go over the deep end, and it's going to be running us instead of us running our lives. And she made the good decision to, okay, I'm going to keep doing this thing that I enjoy, that I'm good at, that other people are benefiting from, but I'm going to do it from a position of balance instead of trying to control my trauma through a good thing.
Since I'm being looked at under a microscope by 50 million people,
Yep.
There is pressure there to perform or to make people happy or to make sure people are like content. There are points in it where you get these highs where it feels good. There's that coping mechanism where I can do something I love, which is definitely a positive to this job. I love writing. I love making people laugh. I love talking to people on the street that watch my videos and making their day. Love that. But then there's just the pressure involved in the job. Like, it's much different than me being a hairdresser, seeing one person a day. And the pressure adds to my own bad thoughts that I'm having that day. Maybe I'm having a good day and maybe it's okay. But if I'm having a bad day, it gets extra bad. Whereas if I wasn't doing this job, because the pressure of all those people watching, if I'm having it like, or maybe it's not even a day, let's say I'm having months where I'm going through a really bad depressive episode, I need to wake up every day and I need to be funny. I need to make people laugh. I need to laugh. I need to put on this mask that feels fake to me. Yeah, I just think it's not doing my self-service or my audience service for me to pretend to be something I'm not.
Now that there is powerful. When we're in a depression, it does feel like as we go through our day that we're putting on a mask. My thing was humor to the point of getting on everybody's nerve, okay? Instead of allowing myself to feel what I was going through, it would be humor, the life of the party, so to speak. Always cracking jokes. Then the whole time miserable and toe up from the flow up. But what she's doing, okay, so she chooses to keep doing what she's doing on her platform, even when she's in a deep depression. And that doesn't surprise me because she's got determination and she's got all of the strength she needs to accomplish and overcome anything in her life. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but you will feel as you go through this depression and just keep functioning like you are putting on an act, that you're wearing a mask. And that's just something that we all experience when we're in a deep depression. But what I like about Kris is that she has chosen in that depression to keep plugging, number one, but number two, to maintain what she's doing on her platform. Now, to me, that takes a lot of strength. To me, that takes a lot of unction. That takes power, internal power to do that. But remember, she says she needs to laugh. I love that. Oh, Kris, I love that you love to laugh, that you can even enjoy laughter in the middle of a deep depression says a whole lot. A whole lot. Okay? That you can even put on your mask and go ahead and do what you are so good at naturally, and to use your talents in the middle of that. I don't know what to tell you, but it's got to be some award out here for that. I'm proud of you.
And I have a wonderful audience that I really do like. I barely get any hate, which, thank you. Well, there's gonna be hate comments all in the below. But I've learned to not really take the hate, or I take the hate comments with like a grain of salt. Like it's whatever. Like I try to focus more on the positive. Those are the people I'm entertaining. If you're not entertained by that, that's fine. Go kick rocks. Like I don't care. There's lots of other people to watch. Mm-hmm. So that's not as bad for me. It's just myself. It's just myself and the pressure I put on myself more than other people, because my audience is like tells me in my comment section, or I've made a couple mental health videos where they're like, take a break, like take a step back. We don't care. Like we'll be here when you get back. But there's the devil on my shoulder that's like, that's not true. Like they're lying. Like, so yeah, it's overcoming those thoughts every day, basically, because that's what our job entails. It's like we need to perform to a certain degree. So it's like choosing my mental health or choosing to make people happy.
Kris, I am so proud of you. I can't tell you what a remarkable person you are. You are powerful in all ways. Understand that the depression thing seems to run in your family and it's physiological. I'm hoping you're not beating yourself up about that. But I'm so proud of you because you found the strength to tell your story. And as long as we don't tell our stories, they rule our lives. More than that, when we don't tell our stories, then others can't gain strength from what we went through. And you decided to push through any fear and do it anyway. But that's who you are. That's who you are. And I have no doubt that you're going to come through with flying colors. Every time I look at your new relationship and I see that you made that major move from one country to another, and that you have allowed yourself to be loved like you are, and that you have not allowed drama to steal your ability to love, your ability to embrace that love. Do you know there's a lot of people out here whose trauma has stolen that from them? And just like you jumping off the roof, trying to be Mary Poppins, climbing trees and bungee jumping, That's the kind of power you have, sweetie. That's the power you are inside and out. And that's the power you have used to heal and to move forward in your journey. Girl, I don't know what to tell you. I am so happy for you and Caleb. I'm so happy for you guys. He's a great guy. I found him when he was having all that trouble with that mechanical engineer guy, and that's when he came across my feed. But boy, when I found you, and I found out that it was you and him, I cannot tell you, girl, it's as if I know you and had a stake in the game. I ain't got a dog in that fight, but I'm happy for you because there are so many of us out here that have been so traumatized and are so blaming ourselves for it. We don't even need anybody else to blame the victim with us because we're doing a darn good job of that ourselves. And if you were to watch some of my videos, you'll see that I'm sitting here 10 years out from a relationship and haven't had another one. And just now realizing after that 10 years that I won't even pray for that because I don't think I deserve it. So I, as another traumatized individual, can't tell you how I'm gaining hope from watching you, how proud I am of you, how happy I am for you. All I can tell you is that you are everything. You're the whole show. Now, I don't know if it's a coping mechanism for you to be doing what you're doing on your social media platforms. To me, that's you stepping into your purpose and the total power of all the natural skills and ability God gave you from the beginning. And you have not allowed trauma to steal that from you. So I look at that as not a coping mechanism. I'm looking at that as the fearless person you are, stepping into her God-given purpose. That's how I see that. So I get that when you're in your purpose, that makes you feel fulfilled. I get that keeps you really happy when we're happy when we're in our purpose. And we help other people when we're in our purpose. And that's the reality that all trauma survivors should be living, is living in their purpose. But I look at that as purpose, and that's more than a coping strategy. That's your determination. That same fearless individual that used to physically do daredevil stuff has internally, that's who you are. That's your makeup. That's who you are. And so you are stepping into your purpose, giving trauma a black eye, and handling your business in spite of the fact that you know that this healing is a process, that it's going to take some time, that it's going to take some determination. But as you begin to heal, you will recognize the fact that that other stuff that happened to you, yes, it was out of your control, but you can't take on responsibility for what somebody else did to you wrong. Look, let me tell you something else that inspires me. You know, Kris, I see what a loss it was for you to lose your friend in high school to suicide. But I also see how you turned that into something that kept you here. Okay? You were able to see through empathy. You are an empath, just so you know, in case nobody's ever told you that you are an empath. But you leaned into your empathy for seeing how others dealt with that trauma of losing that special young man. And you decided that that was going to be your strength not to do that. And you have said more than once that there have been times when you wanted to do that. The pain can get so deep and so permeate that you just want relief. But you have chosen not to do that because you have empathized with the people that you saw go through that, not the least of which was you. And I got to tell you, I thank God for that. Because imagine that you wouldn't even be in this young man's life, that you wouldn't have been breathing long enough to see what it was like to be treated right, to be loved fully, to find your soulmate, and to enjoy and embrace that love as you give the love that is just in you from the beginning to the right person. Okay? I can't imagine a world without you, Kris. I can't imagine, now that I found you, I'm all late to the game, but hey, I got here. I can't imagine my life without you, now that I found out who you are. Girl, look, I'm not gonna keep talking. I'm gonna tell you this. You keep on in the power of who you are. You keep leaning into your purpose. You stay the powerful young lady you are, and you give fear a black eye every time it raises its ugly head in your life. Give it a black eye. You are fearless. You always have been, and I, for one, am so proud of you. Okay, everybody, I'm out. Always remember, your greatest power is realizing the truth of who you are. Know that truth. Before you go, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, share the episode. Thanks.